So hello, everyone, and welcome to our backstage chatter. My name is Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present to you today the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast with Dion McCormick, no relation, who's our lead solutions engineer. Dion will be back with us in a moment, but we are also joined by Sarah Mitchell, who's in charge of our documentation. And Sarah is here today, and I believe she's going to answer a question to get us started. So hello, Sarah, are you there?
I am here.
Excellent. So I think you have something to show us, I hope.
Yeah, I sent all the content to Dion because I was like, Dion will do it. But like, looks I'm on the hook. I'm on the hook to do it for you guys. All right.
I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter. I know, last minute, and then we'll.
Okay. And can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. Yep.
All right, that's great. So last week, for those of you who had joined us, we did a top high-level overview of all the styling tools in Alpha Anywhere, and we discussed the ones that make really big sweeping changes and then the really localized stuff. And one of the questions that came in during that presentation was, how do I change the style at runtime, specifically in a case where like you've given the user an option to pick a style? And at the time, I wasn't sure what the answer is, but I did a little bit of research, and it turns out it's really simple. In the properties of a component, this is a UX component that I prepared for this presentation, you have something called style name, which defines the style for the component, and you can set it to a specific style, such as Alpha, Alpha Amber, or maybe one you've created yourself. Some of these other themes down here, you can set it to that. You can use project style, which is a placeholder indicating that the style name actually comes from the project properties. So if you use project style, that's a great way to specify across all your components that they're all going to use the same style, and that's defined somewhere else, so you don't have to worry about updating every single individual component in the case of really large projects in the instance where you want to change that. But there's a third option, and it's called session var name. So this right here, if you can see it, it's opening angle bracket, session colon var name. In this case, it says my style. Var name is the name of a session variable, and then a closing angle bracket. And what that says to the system is read the style name out of this session variable. So some things to know about session variables: they are set on the server. So in the case of giving the user an option to change the style at runtime, using a session variable to set that style name is going to require that you reload the component from the server. It has to be recomputed, because when the component comes down to the client's machine, we've already determined what style sheet to give you. The HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, all of that stuff gets computed up on the server and then sent down. So in order to update the UX, you have to kind of like re-download that information again to change the style over. But with that in mind, changing the style for a component is as simple as just updating a session variable. In addition to that, just a quick note: if you have enabled pre-computing your component, either at design time, you will also have to turn on this allow style to be changed at runtime property. Otherwise, Alpha Anywhere will never update that style information for you. So make sure you do check that. In the case of a project style, we turn that on for you automatically. We don't do that for you if you specify using the session. But this component here that I've got, it's one of the templates that I loaded up, and it's configured to use a session variable called myStyle. And for the case of this demo, I've defined my style in the A5W page that loads the component. So this A5W page that I've opened, it's called dynamic style. I created that by clicking the save page option up here and going through this dialog to save a page for this component, which will embed the component for you into that A5W page. But inside in the HTML editor on the source tab, if you come in here, you'll find this block of text. It's got this delete temple, some words, and this A5W load component. This is the code in the A5W page that loads that component. So right above that is where I've created my session variable And here I've got 4 examples that I want to show. This first one using my style. And the way I'm going to demo this is I'm just going to publish this locally and we're going to look at it in our browser. And I think I still have it open here. I do. So let's create a new tab. So this is that A5W page. This is it using the alpha style. We can verify this by opening up the control panel. This is Edge, and the way I did that is I hit the F12 button. You might have to hold down a function key to do that. But if you look up here in the header, and you just scroll down here, this right here, this CSS alpha style, this is the style that was loaded in. And it does look like the alpha style here. So we just kind of look at things here. If I go back to Alpha Anywhere and I comment out that line and I come down here and pick something else like alpha rows and save that and republish this and then reload it, everything should appear pink now because it's loading the alpha rows style in.
There it is. Awesome.
Yep. So a few caveats. You have to publish all of the styles to your application server that you want to provide as an option for your users. If you don't publish them up there, they're not going to be there to load. That can be a little bit tricky, but there are ways to do it. You could, obviously if you've got local themes that you've created in your project, those will already be included because they're as in your they're part of your web project. They're in that file. Everything that's in here is going to get published. But in terms of like the system themes, like the Alpha Rose, Alpha Teal, Android Dark, those aren't copied into your workspace, so you'll have to get them up through other ways. And there's no easy way that I could find through the project properties to specify additional style sheets. But something that you could do, and this does work, is you could create a UX component, a dummy UX component. I think you have to put one control in it. But you can specify down here in this property called additional component styles, a list of all the other styles you want to load. Now, the way additional component styles works is these are other style sheets that I want to load into this component. So if you came down here and in those controls, those places that you want to have a dynamic style and just listed those styles in those controls, you're not going to get what you want because Alpha is going to load all of those styles into your component, and depending on how you have it configured, it's going to look a little strange. It's not going to behave quite right. So don't put it in your actual app, but you can put it in a dummy component, and then Alpha will publish all those things up for you pretty easily. And then
Nice.
the third option
if
is
you
to
wanted
just
to have in your like a nighttime mode and a daytime mode in your app, you could create a dummy component, right? And then load both the nighttime and daytime in it.
yeah, and
In
it's
your real
pretty
component, use a
yeah.
variable and let the user set that variable.
So in fact, I'll just show you how you do that right now. This is a UX component I just created by clicking on, I used this quick bar here. You can also use new. And then in here, you have to add one controller. Alpha will not be happy. But you can just come in here and just type in everything that you want to include. Let's see, Alpha Rose. What's another one? Alpha Blue.
Sure.
And then save that as like style loading component, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to turn on pre-rendering here. And then save that. And then when you publish it, it will grab those styles. So I had already published up Alpha Teal and Alpha Rose and Alpha, but Alpha Blue wasn't there yet. So you can see that it's grabbing it here and it's going to push those up. So that's a really easy way to get things up there. And once they're up there, I mean, you can choose to delete this off your server. You could also, if you have security, you can just set the access on this particular component to always denied, so it's never ever loaded.
Oh, that's a neat trick. Cool. Well, thanks very much, Sarah. All right, let's see if our fearless leader, Dion, has joined us. Looks like he may be back in. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for your patience. And Sarah, thank you for the incredible job you did last week. I got many, many compliments on it. People love it. So we do appreciate it. Awesome.
Hey, and there you are. I see your
There
screen
I
there,
am.
Dion.
I know. Kind of a step backwards if you really.
I don't know about that.
Anyway, hey, thank you, everybody. We are here for your questions. As Sarah demonstrated, we take them very seriously and we try to cover all questions, whether we can do it in session or later. So please, if you have any questions, go to your GoToWebinar control panel and in the questions area, get those. Dave will be monitoring them. And along with that, we always recommend that you send things to guides@alphasoftware.com. That allows us to kind of get prepared and allow us to do a little better homework so we can prepare it. And actually, we got a great question this week that we're going to cover today. So it's really, really exciting stuff. And we really appreciate people taking the time to do that. And we monitor that very closely. So do take the opportunity to send those in if you have questions for us that you want us to cover in our webinars. Okay. So one thing I wanted to do real quick was talk a little bit about a couple cool things that I don't know if you're aware of, but I want to make sure, and I know this seems a little low, but no, the super exciting thing is we have just announced our DevCon 2020 is now open for registration. I should have that image here with the invite here, but so if you haven't gotten that, send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com. We'll get it out to you. We're getting great response and great signups. We're going to have a phenomenal conference later this year, and we'll have more details on that as we start to flesh out those pieces there. But again, if you haven't joined us for it, make sure to either go check your email, make sure it didn't go in your spam folder, or better yet, just give us a call at Guides and we will get it right to you, because we want to have as many people as possible on here. There's been so many dramatic changes to the Alpha platform. There are a lot of really cool sessions and training and other stuff that we've got planned out. So we really want you to be with us and attend with us. And I think you're going to find it's going to be very, very valuable. But I wanted to update a couple quick things on our roadmap. One of the cool things here is that in Alpha Cloud, which has now been released, is Alpha Cloud now has what's called the free cloud SQL database for development. So I wanted to show you a little quick demonstration of that today to show you how cool it is and what you can do there. And along with that, some of the powerful techniques. And then I have the question that came in from our esteemed colleague, and I'm going to go ahead and jump into that also. But before that, I also wanted to make sure you knew that each Tuesday, we've talked about this before, is Transform Tuesday. And Dave does a phenomenal job of doing his weekly webinar, again, with the incredible changes in the in the Transform product. It's hard to stay up with it. So a really good one this week. If for the people who did not attend, Dave, if you could just kind of give them a few words about what we focused on this week on the Transform, that'd be awesome.
We did. We strayed a little bit from Transform, but not too far. We did Transform reporting, and we used Alpha Anywhere to do it because it is fantastic. It can read Transform as a data source, but you can also do, which we had shown in previous episodes, an extract, transfer, and load procedure where you can take your API data and put it into a really quick SQL database that you can slice and dice any way you want. So we went through the whole process of building reports and doing grouping. And next Tuesday, even if you're not into Transform, you might find this useful. We're going to be taking our reports and putting them into web pages and creating controls on those web pages to let people set filters for dates and technicians and things like that. I'm also going to show how you publish it, so you get the whole soup to nuts experience of doing web reporting. So whether you're into Transform or not, that might be a good session for you to see. Also, they're only half as long, just 30 minutes. So
I know.
Join us at if you need an invite, send an email to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. Thanks a lot,
Great
Dion.
stuff. Yeah, and it's really cool. I mean, the neat thing about Transform is obviously how fast you can build forms and stuff. And with the inherent integration with Alpha Anywhere, at the very least, it is an incredibly powerful prototyping tool that allows you to quickly generate solutions and then tie them into Alpha. And so a lot of really fun things you can do with that. So first I wanted to show you, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but obviously Alpha Cloud, an enormous amount of investment has gone into that platform. It keeps getting better and better and better and more reliable, easier to use, more features and capabilities. And one of the newest ones was something now, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my Alpha Cloud little icon here, and I'm going to go to Advanced, and you'll see now there's something called subscription test databases. And this is really neat stuff. Basically, one of the challenges we've had with people before is they want to play with Alpha Cloud, they want to use Alpha Cloud, but how do I connect to my database? I can't, do I have to go set up RDS or anything? So there are extra steps. So what's really neat is that the development team went ahead and created the ability to have some sample test databases. So I'm showing you right here the interface to Alpha Cloud. What's kind of cool about this is that I can create both, and let me go ahead and show this. I can create either a Postgres or SQL Server or MySQL Server. So I actually can pick the technology I want, and then I can create databases on that core technology. I actually already have a MariaDB MySQL database, but also I could go ahead and say, you know what, I'm doing a Postgres. I could create that or SQL Server. So we can really handle all of our different clients' needs with one. Now, once you've set up that server, we can go ahead and create databases on there, sample databases. And so we have existing databases here, and then I can create a new database. And also kind of nice is if I just want to play around, I can actually install a sample database. So I don't even have to go through and build the database, the tables, load data. We have sample databases that are available. And you can do things like backing them up and restoring. It's actually very sophisticated in terms of making your life easier. And so this is now in the Alpha Cloud product. It's part of the subscription service, and it just takes one less thing you have to do. It's always our goal is to make your life easier, to allow you to focus your energies on actually building your applications and not doing a lot of DevOps and other stuff here. So you're able to actually, go in and do all the work. And it uses a neat technique called SSH tunneling, which allows you to, you can go ahead and connect to the database and then manage it within Alpha. But also, once you are in this environment, I can go ahead and open my tunnel. And what that does is basically make a secure connection from my local system here to the database server. So now I can use Navicat or SSMS or any of the other development tools because they can connect through Alpha to the test database. So again, one less thing you have to worry about in terms of setting up connections, secure connections, etc. So this is called subscription test databases. And it's important, this isn't really not meant to be a production database. This is for your initial development, testing, experiments, and things like that. There are, so you'll notice right here it says is not recommended and supported for a number of reasons, specifically about, potential confidential data and other things like that. So we do want you to use it, and we encourage it there. And then what's nice is once you have all the pieces together, then you can go get an RDS instance or an Azure instance or an on-premise database that's connected in there. There's many things you can do after you set this up. But this is called subscription database, and it is included with Alpha Cloud now. And it's just a really neat thing I wanted to share. It's really kind of fun and easy to do. I mean, I was able to whip up a database, connect it into my system, build a grid in a matter of a few minutes. Oh, I did want to show you one real cool thing. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm just going to go to my MariaDB. This is how well thought out this thing is. I'm going to go to Actions, and I'm going to say Create Database. And I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go call it Webinar. So I'm creating this new database, and I could create it with a sample. So now it's creating that. So boom, I now have a new database on there. Now what I can do is I can go here and I can get connection string. And then you'll notice here's my connection string to this database. So it's already written the connection string and done everything I need to do with it. And I can copy that to the clipboard, or I can click Save to Name Connection, select my new webinar database, and I can click Save. And check this out. This is so well thought out. I thought this was one of the coolest things. Now I go to my Alpha DAO connection string. There's my new database connection. And I'm able to actually
all ready for you back in the IDE, huh?
Yeah, you didn't even have to go like copy paste, go build it or anything else. It already knew everything for me. So I just go click, 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 and I'm done. Now watch this. I don't have sample data in there. Let's do this because I do have some sample data. I'm going to go back into the Alpha Cloud Manager. Go to my subscription database, excuse me. And I'll go ahead and I'll select my MariaDB. I'll go Actions, Get Connection String. I'm going to save as a name connection. I'm going to select customer A because I've got some stuff in there. And I can rename this. I don't have to use the default, but I'll go ahead and click Save. Okay. Boom. Now I'm going to go here to my grid components. Could be a list control. There we go. I'm going to create a new grid. And I'm going to go here to query. Check it out. There's my new connection string. Connect. There are my tables. Go in. And this is one of the sample databases. And voila. Voila. There it is. Boom. I have a grid here. It is connected to my test database on Alpha Cloud. So it's not on my local machine or anything like that. And when I'm ready to go, I could publish this to Alpha Cloud and it would work just perfect because it's all within that environment. So I thought that was, Dave, it was just such a cool little touch. You know, it was kind of
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have to worry about it. And also, you know, what's kind of cool is, and I don't know if you guys experiment with it, but if I go up here to Tools, Database Explorer, I click plus and I select that and click here. And right within here, I can see what tables were built, etc. I can go right here and click show the data. Yep, there we go. So, you know, I can kind of just start using my database with this sample database to do experiments and whatever I need to do. And I can actually use the tools in Alpha. I can go here to Tools. I think it's command window. Is that it? No, where is it? I can create a table actually. It's kind of cool. Actually in Alpha, you can go Tools. Where is, oh, right here. So I can go in here and let's say I have a database I've set up and go create this. I select my connection string, my MariaDB webinar, and then this will take a moment as it connects to it. I go to texture so I can add a field. Table name will be webinar. And, oops, where'd my mouse go? I lost my mouse. Uh-oh, I think my mouse went down. Bear with me.
Yeah.
One of those days. Egads. It's going so well, of course. So, yeah, my mouse definitely went south.
A mouse problem.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, there it is. I had to power it up. It was a wireless mouse. So I go there. I go to create table. Okay. Now this is so cool. Then I can go Tools, Database Explorer. Go here, refresh it. Oh, actually, I did it in Webinar. And there's my webinar table that I just created with my fields and stuff like that. So, you know, you don't necessarily need to use a third-party development tool for database. You can use a lot of the built-in features in Alpha creating these things. Obviously, we recommend you use those tools just to make your life easier. But all this is done on a test database that I don't have to administer. I don't have to worry about. It's just up and running and off to the races as we go from there. Cool. So that is the Alpha Cloud subscription test databases. Fun stuff. And if you get a chance, if you have Alpha Cloud, play with it. You'll really enjoy it. And you might find a lot of really cool uses for your development and testing purposes. Now,
very cool.
In fact, we can use that now for our demonstration today. So part of our demonstration today came from a question. And this is, and I'm going to pop back in real quick. This is back to the future in terms of, by the way, that's a copyrighted image, so I have to blank it out later. So the question came in is sort of like, okay, I've got a editable grid. How do I lay out in the detail view the grid or the fields? And what's nice is that the grid predated the UX. So a lot of the concepts that are in UXs actually exist in grids. They were sort of tested, developed, and worked out from there. Obviously, a UX has a lot more powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new grid here. And I'm going to go ahead and click grid. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through this fairly quickly, but just to kind of let you know. So I'm going to select my connection string. And I'm going to select my table. Let's just do customers. Oh, you know what? Let me pick a different one here. Yeah, demonstration. I want to pick it with a good table in there. Nope, that's the same one. Oh, there it is. Okay, that's the one. Okay, now third time is the charm. Okay, so I'll grab my customers here. Now I go to my regular fields here. I'll just select a few of those, and I have my working grid. And that's one of the things nice with grids. Just boom, 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 things go, and you have it available here. Now what I want to do is make this as an editable grid. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this customer ID, go down there and hide it. I don't actually need to have customer. I need to have it in here because it's the unique ID and primary key, but it doesn't necessarily need to be displayed. So I'm just going to go down there and I'm going to hide that. So now we have our standard grid. And you know what? Maybe I want the last name to be the first column. So I'll switch that too. Notice how I have first name, last name. We'll just move that up. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to make this editable. So I'm going to go here to component type. And I'm going to say the grid contains a detail view part. And that detail view part is editable. Great. So now you'll notice on the left, created a new area here called detail view. Go to fields, and now I can grab my stuff and throw it right here. In fact, let me grab a whole bunch of these things so we have a large one here. Okay. Now, to make this interesting, I'm going to go ahead and go to properties. And what I'd like to do is instead of positioning it on the page, I want it to be like a pop-up window. So I'm selecting from detail view window position, the option pop-up window modal. And I have to set a couple other little things, otherwise it'll give me, I can say, okay, I'm going to do prefetch. I'm going to do these three. Prefetch the data means it's going to open faster, only show in the detail view, meaning only when I click on it. And then I also like to close the detail view after I submit. So I usually select those three just to make my life easier. So now we've done that. We'll go ahead and go in here. Now you'll notice something a little different. Our last name, first name is switched, but now I've got a little button over each because it now knows it says, oh, we have a detail view. I'm going to go ahead and use that here. So I can click one of these and you'll see it pops up my detail view. Now that worked out great, but there's a few problems. I mean, this is not really usable. I mean, well, it's usable, it works, but I have to kind of go ahead and go up and down and everything else. Not very handy. So let's edit that detail view. So I'm going to go over here, much like I have fields for detail view fields. First thing I want to do is take this customer ID. Now remember, I need to have it in both the grid and the detail view because that's how Alpha knows how to write the code in terms of SQL updates, etc. But I can hide that by doing hide row. So that'll hide that row. Now, you'll notice that everything is vertical here. So that's the natural tendency. But let's say I want to have more of a side-by-side. Well, Alpha has some cool things. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this first group of fields, and I'm clicking and dragging them. Then I'm going to go over here to Insert. I'm going to click Insert, and you'll see I have some cool little features. I have other things that I can insert in my grid to show it. And these are really directives, like putting buttons and things. So I'm going to go ahead, for now, I'm going to click Container Begin. And then I'm going to click OK. And this is asking me, do I want to put in an opening and closing container? The answer is yes. And if you've done UXs, you kind of know what a container is. It's basically an invisible field that kind of groups things together. It allows you to kind of group items in your user interface together. So I'm going to highlight here, go Insert, put another container there. And last but not least, I'm going to put another container here. Actually, I think I have to have everything container, so I'll just do that. And I'll put a container here. And I'll go ahead and save this as grid, detail, view, formatting, grid. Okay. And I'll go ahead and do my working preview. And now watch how great it looks. Anybody know the trick? Oh, wait a minute here. It's not great. Well, the reason is because we do have those containers below it, but check out what I did. When I put in the container, you'll notice that it's got my little carriage return or paragraph symbol here. So I can click on the end of this container, go over here to break, and say, you know what, don't put a break after that. And I'm going to go here and do the same thing. So I'm removing the line breaks. This one I could too, it doesn't really matter. Good to go. Now let's go check it out. So wait till this refreshes, hit there, and now we're starting to talk. So we have these three containers. And since I'm not doing the line break, it actually aligns them side by side. And so as you can see, now I have a much nicer presentation of data. So I can go ahead and edit this data and do everything I want to do here, save it. It saves the data and it puts it back in here. So I can go Sally1, save that, and you'll see that it's adding it into the database and editing it there and modifying it there. So everything else works the same. We're just doing there. Now, the cool thing is I've got some other things I can do. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to highlight these here, and I'm just going to go Insert. I'm going to say Frame and click OK. And I'll call this General Information. Now, I want to get rid of this container here. I don't really need it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that by clicking on it and then using the left arrow. And I have to make sure I take care of the in container too. So now I have this first frame. Now remember, you'll notice that it inserted the line break or paragraph. So I'm going to take that off. Now let's go ahead and save this and take a look and see what it looks like. And we'll go into here and you'll notice that almost the same, but now it puts a nice little box around it with there. So, classic, I would put like billing, and therefore I wouldn't say bill address. I would probably say billing and then remove the bill from each of these. And then same thing with shipping, etc. So it's pretty handy in terms of doing that. So again, if you've done UX stuff, you're probably pretty familiar with containers, and containers work very similar in terms of you're basically grouping a set of controls and allowing it to do that as a formatting technique. And that allows you to do those pieces there. One other thing that's kind of cool on a frame too is that you can modify it. Like, so I can create the style, I can change the styles and other pieces that are associated with there. So it's pretty nice. And I can actually have multiple frame types. So I've got simple, I can try modern. So let's see what modern looks like. Simple is that classic piece of text with a box around it. And so I'll go into working preview. And after this, I'll open it up for questions, and I just want to show you what it looks like now. So it's kind of now a modern looking. So you'll notice it has general here. That's the name of my, and then you'll notice that it has not a bounding box, but rather a shaded region. So it actually looks pretty nice. And again, that's where you can take a plain Jane user interface and make it look very good. And you'll notice I'm not having to do a bunch of HTML, CSS, classes, things like that. Want to show you one other cool thing you can do is I'm going to go ahead and click Show Hide button, enable this. This may be of interest if you have a lot of data. So for instance, let's say you had a detail view and it had like 50 things on it. You may want to say, oh, you know what? I want to kind of hide those pieces here. Now, where that gets interesting is the following. Let me go back in here. I'm going to go back in here and put these pieces here. And I'm going to go here and we'll check it out. And you'll see something pretty fun. So I'll go ahead and edit that one. So you can see I've got like the ability to kind of shrink these items here. So I can still use all that space vertically, but if you had like a bunch of things, you can like, basically categorize the different elements, general versus a billing address versus shipping address, etc. So there's a lot of nice features that you can use, and it really extends the life of the grid. Now, remember, this is not responsive. We really recommend, that you look at list controls, especially now with the inline editing. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do with that. But this is really handy for just quick and dirty forms. If you want to make them look pretty good, lay them out so there's a little bit, and they're probably going to be just used on a web browser. As you can see, I was able to build this all within a very short period of time. So that is how you can use the built-in special controls. And again, you can do things like column and row spacing. You can merge cells so it will show two things in one. Let me just show you that last one here. So let's say first name, last name. I'm going to go here and I'm going to insert a merge cells begin. And then actually, let me go back up and then I'm going to go here and insert my merge cells in. Works a little differently here. So now let's give this a save and show you what it looks like here. Hopefully it looks okay. No, in a moment. Okay, now check that out. You'll notice that it's now put these side by cells. It's merged them into a single row. Remember, this is a grid. So it's actually, this is a grid and this is a little baby subgrid. So it's thinking of each thing as a row in the grid. Well, when you do merge cells, it says, oh, take these two cells and put them on the same grid. So now I can go here, I can insert a piece of static text and I can say the static text is, actually, you know what? Yeah, let me try this. I'll do this one. Name. And then we'll go back and do this. And again, at this point, I'd probably be starting to use a UX linked to a grid. Then I have all the flexibility of a grid, but this just allows you to show you how far you can get with that. So you'll notice it has name there. May not look the greatest thing in the world, but that's the way it goes from there. So, and again, this is where you start getting into that, well, the law of diminishing return. Sure, you can do things pretty quickly, but the reality, if I just go and build a UX out of this thing, which only takes maybe 5 minutes, then I can have complete control over the view of feel and do a lot of other fun stuff with it and have the full model of a UX available. I could have sub lists and everything else there. So that is the idea of using what are called the special controls in the detail view to allow you to enhance the layout of a grid detail view. And I want to thank the loyal listener who requested this and this information. And I give you, go out, check it out. Have fun with it. And again, this is a way to just pretty up your grids really quick. But again, be careful. You get to a certain point where you're like, might as well just build a grid and then connect it to UX. That often is a much better way to go, because you'll find that if you start spending a lot of time with merge cells as well, how do I align that? And how do I do this? How do I do that? That's all taken care of in the UX control. Cool. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, a couple of questions. First of all, and this one we get a fair amount, is the difference between grids and UXs. So the question is this grid with a detail view better than opening up, say, a UX form and being able to edit there?
Gotcha.
So sort of what's the difference between the two? And why would you use one over the other?
Yeah, so the way I approach it is there's two key considerations you got to think about. And the first consideration, more than anything else, is your target platforms. If you are anticipating using mobile and stuff, then you really want to move towards list and UXs because they're responsive in nature. The grid is not responsive in nature. It tries, but at a certain point, it's really not a responsive control. You don't have all the fine-tuned control over it. So that's consideration number one. Consideration number two is that if I've got a very straightforward little data table, like I'm just collecting 3 or 4 items in that data table, you can do a grid in a few minutes and it takes very little time. And if I know I'm just going to go on to desktop web, I just use that. But anytime I start to do a little bit more where I want to have more control over the user interface, I drop into UX, because the UX gives you complete control over the experience of the user interface. And as you can see, I was able to enhance this one. But to be honest, I'm now at the point, if I want to do anything more than this, I would just I'd cut it right here and go right to a UX, because I can build that UX and then lay it out exactly how I want it. And I also know that UX is going to be responsive in case I move to a different platform. I want to use that UX again on a mobile platform. So I'd say quick and dirty, go with a grid. I mean, it works, it's powerful, it's rock solid. You're going to get good success. You'll have enough control to do very quick kind of things. But then once you start going into any more advanced styling or anything else, boom, I would just go right into a UX component and start using that. Plus the UX component has a whole bunch of other stuff. Like for instance, here's a great example, which I've been playing with and I love it. So let's say in here I have a file attachment to this. Well, I could add a button and that button could then sit there and attach it. But now with the new drag and drop control, if I have a UX, I can actually put a little area on my form and drag on it. And I was showing someone that this morning and it was so cool. I basically had a simple UX. I dropped a form on there, or the new drag and drop upload. And literally I was able to grab stuff on my desktop, drop it onto that area, and it showed it uploading to Amazon S3. And it's fast, efficient, it works great. And that's kind of where, well, you really could not do that on a grid. So it's time, so you can create a better experience for your people, your end users, by moving to a UX. So that's your consideration. Quick and dirty, stick with a grid. They work great. If you're not worried about responsive, want to get something done quickly, go for it. And then if you want something more fancy and or responsive, then definitely look at going right into a UX and doing it in UX. And luckily with the new list component capabilities, it's getting easier and easier to replicate what you would normally have done in a grid in a list. And the other thing that's true is that list controls are much lighter weight than grids. Grids have a lot of weight to them in terms of the size of the component when you download it, etc. Lists are very simple. They're just HTML renderers. So you'll find that a list control renders very quickly and very snappy and refreshes faster, and it just creates a smoother, silkier experience than you can get out of a grid. So those are the kind of the decisions you can look at. And I know it's not a yay or nay. It's sort of like we call it spectrum of decision making, but definitely lean towards lists and UX components if you can, but don't be afraid to continue using the grid to put together things really quickly.
Very cool. While you were showing off the database stuff in the Alpha Cloud, it looked like
Yes.
one of the examples included SSH tunneling. I was wondering if you know anything about that or could talk to it, because it raised a
I
whole
learned a lot about that this week. Actually, very
Really?
important. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So how Alpha Cloud works, hold on a second here. Bear with me. I'm going to bring up a little slide. Is that okay if I pause for a
Of
minute
course.
here? Because pictures tell, let's see where it is. Okay. And we did this training a long time, so it's kind of cool. Put it back here. Okay. So what is Alpha Cloud? Well, this is a little diagram I put together sometime. It's like a blast from the past, huh, Dave? I kind of dug it out.
Wow.
So Alpha Cloud exists on top of AWS. We don't have to. It's actually agnostic. We just happen to use that as our platform now, but we could go to Google Cloud or Azure in the future, or even on-premise. There's really some cool stuff you can do. But most importantly is there's something called the Alpha Cloud Management Layer, and it's basically a bunch of software that sits on there that takes care of everything for you. And what it does is it spins up IaaS instances. So when you go to deploy something Alpha Cloud, it actually spins up servers, sets the version of Alpha you want to use, etc. And then your deployment or application sits on top of it. So it's a fairly complex environment. I mean, below this, it's just crazy complex, but you don't see that complexity. It's really simple. So what they're doing now, which is kind of fun, is that when you provision this, we actually, which is kind of cool, now we allow you to, at the same time you're spinning up a Alpha instance. So this is a version of the Alpha, this is the Alpha app server for IaaS. You can now also go in here and put together SQL Server, a server for that. Or I can put in MariaDB, or I can do there, and I can put in there a one or all in Postgres. Now, also what's cool, and I don't know if I spelled that right, but then the other thing I can do is shape is, let me if I got there. Oh, cool, they've got some there. I think, underwear. I'm not sure we want to do that. Where's database? So technology.
Oh, it looks like there's
There
a
we go.
search up at the top, in case you want to.
Oh, thanks.
Sure.
There we are.
Yes.
Cool. So, it'll actually, what it will do is when you ask it, it will spin this up and then it will create this for you. Now, here's the deal. You, the consumer, and let's see, you can't change the color. That's interesting. I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, you are up here on your development environment. All right. So I'll go, this is you. Okay. Now, the idea would be I've got to now connect from my development environment to here. So I'm going to make a connection to my database so I can go from my local machine up here. Now, the problem is all of this is inside a very protected environment. It's inside of AWS. And more importantly is that it's inside of like a black box. It's, well, I guess it wouldn't be a white, what would it, it's a box. So let's call it a big box. So technically I cannot connect to there. So what happens is that alpha, the development environment, and alpha create what's called an SSH tunnel. It's a classic core thing that basically is a secure connection between your environment, your local machine, and a service or server running on Alpha Cloud, our server there. So the interesting thing about it is that it's protected, meaning that nobody else, and this is important for you to know, nobody else can punch right into these databases because they have to go through us. They have to have that tunneling, and they have to go through this later here. So that does two things. One, it allows us to completely manage this environment for you, so we don't have to worry about, we'll take care of it for you. But also more importantly is from a security standpoint, the only way to get here, so someone else can't try and come in and grab, go to your databases. They'd have to work within our environment. So what Alpha does, which is kind of interesting, and I thought this was very intriguing, is that that's your development machine. This is the Alpha dev machine or dev environment. So really what happens is that your development environment here, okay, so that's your machine right here. This is your running the Alpha development tool. It connects to Alpha Cloud. And in fact, it has to be running to connect to it. And it creates this secure connection for you. So then you can go ahead inside Alpha, but more importantly, and last thing I'll throw up here is that this is like your dev tool. Let's just call it Navicat because that's a very popular one out there. So Navicat can now use that tunnel, that Alpha development, and go to basically through this environment up to there. So SSH tunneling is just a secure method from one machine to another. We set that up and manage it. And we do it through this development environment primarily for your protection, meaning that the only way you're going to get access is you logging into Alpha Cloud through your development environment. And then both your development environment and any other tools can go access that database to do what it needs to do. But then if this is not running, someone else can't go in from the outside. So I don't know if that's clear as mud, but that's kind of a little bit of a background on it. It's a way to allow us to connect in and set up and manage those databases for you without you having to worry about it, but also at the same time provide a high level of protection so that someone else can't, just go in and muck with stuff. They've got to, there's layers of security they're going to have to go through, but still give you the flexibility of doing it within the development environment or your own third-party tool running on your local development machine there. So I hope that sheds a little more life on it. And if you just go SSH and Google, there's a lot of discussions, but it's just a secure connection between one machine to another machine.
Excellent. So we have a runtime question. I've got one of those in a while.
Oh, wow.
And let me see if I can find it here, which is it's about running applications on a network with runtime. Is it possible to run an application on a network using runtime? Do you want me to field this or do you want to field that one?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Right. So the runtime, Alpha Anywhere has a product called the Alpha Runtime, and it dates back to when Alpha was a Windows database product only. So you would develop an application that would run in Alpha, we called it Alpha 5 back then. And then if you wanted to, you could install Alpha 5 on other machines in your local area network. They'd all have to be running Alpha 5, but they could access the same database, and you could create a multi-user type of application for Windows. It did not apply to web. It only applies to Windows Desktop. And while we do have the runtime available still, that is what it's used for. So it's meant for working locally with databases in a Windows environment across multiple machines. So it's not used for web. Let's see, we've got a couple other questions going on as well. Okay, here's a documentation question, and we may have the answer to that. We did it at one point. It may just be out of date.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is. Is there documentation available or in which shows you what all of the files are that Alpha creates? So in other words, what are the files that the IDE makes? What are the ones that are published on the server? They have different extensions. You have a 5 web component and you have A5UX, and a whole bunch of other things. There's workspace files, A5W files for web pages. What are all the file extensions for? Okay.
I'm not sure if there is a specific article on our site there. There's a reference here, but this is client language server. This is more for APIs and functions kind of thing there.
Yeah.
I can answer this.
Oh, okay, great.
My domain.
Okay.
What is it?
We document the different file types in different places. There's no central location, but since it's come up, I'll add it.
We can create a one page with all the different file extensions.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
what
we
this
can talk
is.
about
And
that. Did they have a specific question about a specific file type, or just like a general?
I
like,
have not seen that, but if you would like to add, someone would like to type that in, that would be fine too. Let's see what else we've got. Someone said that they've used SSH with Toad, but have not been able to figure out how to use it directly with Alpha Anywhere.
And the answer is you can't. In fact, that's a really good question. Yeah, the problem is that you have to have the for security purposes. It's been set up so that it's a kind of a private SSH tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And it only works in conjunction here. So we've been working on that, and it's really a security element.
So if you're using like Navicat or something like that, how do you do that?
Well, all you do is open your, so the first thing you do is you go to your Alpha Cloud.
Okay.
Okay. And then once that's, what did I hit? Yeah, I hit that. I'm so sorry.
Lots of connection.
I thought I had hit a wrong button.
Oh, okay.
So once I go in here, the first thing I'm going to do is go here and tell it which server I'm going to connect to. And then, I have this SSH tunnel. Now, once I've got that open, I can click here, and this is what you would put into your third-party tool to connect to the database. So it shows localhost. In fact, I'm not worried about you seeing my password here, because unless you're running on my machine, it's not going to help you.
Oh, it's encoded to your machine. Okay.
It's coded to my machine, and it's encoded to my subscription with Alpha Cloud, and you have to be running the Alpha development environment. So anyway, you go into Navicat or whatever, you put in the host name there, the port, the username and password, and this then will connect, and you'll see the database up and running inside of your tool there. But if you do one of two things, you either hit close here, or if you close out of your development environment, it will drop that connection.
It goes poof.
And I just literally found that out yesterday. I was doing some experiments and other things like that, so I finally got clarity.
So in Navicat, is localhost what you're connecting to, and then Alpha works out where localhost is really supposed to be, kind of thing?
Yeah, like normally you'd put an IP address or a server name. You would just put in localhost and then that port number. And what happens is Alpha development environment's looking at that signal and then is setting up the communication to go all the way back to the database server there. So again, a lot of really sophisticated stuff is going on underneath the covers, but all you need to know is just make sure you A, open up that tunnel, and then B,
to be open,
grab
and
those
the IDE
credentials.
needs to be open, right? All right.
Yeah, and those are, that tunnel information is, once you've got it, if I close and restart this and then restart it, I don't have to go back and reset things up in my database because it kind of is going to reuse the same tunnel information. So once I've set it to this server, then my, not connection string, I'm so sorry. This information doesn't change. So I can then now launch the tool and connect in at that point.
Very cool. Oh, that's really neat. When you were giving a demo earlier, someone saw that you had a SharePoint connection string, and they were very interested to know, how do you set that up? They've been unable to find documentation on that.
Yeah, it's kind of a newer capability. So you go and you build it, and we go to SharePoint.
Yeah.
And then, so this is going to be your SharePoint URL. So this is the URL of your server. And then username and password for your login to it. And then there's different ways to do it. If you're on your own, if it's Windows, you can go to Windows Integrated and it goes right there. So there's different, or if you're using SharePoint Online, there's a different username and password kind of scenario.
Hmm.
So then once you have this set up here, it connects to it and it just treats it as a database. So you're all of a sudden your lists up on your SharePoint site are going to show up as like, they look like tables and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Fantastic.
I do want to mention that it's not documented because it hasn't been released yet. So,
Oh.
like
Pre-release.
there's
Use
Okay.
at your own risk.
it's not even in the pre-release. It's not documented anywhere. So just if you have access to this, just be aware that we're not done yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Very
you.
nice. Dion's getting the stuff ahead of time, it looks like. Very nice.
Dion's sharing the secrets.
It's sharing the secrets. Okay. That's why people were jumping at it. Great.
Otherwise
just
known
like
as guinea pig.
Yeah, exactly. So you had actually mentioned before, again, about the SSH tunneling. We just want to reiterate, you need to have the tunnel open. You need to have the Alpha IDE running. But as far as the port and maybe even the password, that doesn't typically change. Is that right? You can just leave that in your Navicat.
That is correct. Those pieces.
Okay.
I think what it does is once it sets up this server over here,
Yeah.
and it then it sets all that up for that server. Because you'll notice when I go here, sorry, I keep jumping around, but let me go to more Alpha Cloud subscription databases. Currently right here, I only have one server, which is MariaDB. You'll see in a moment. Here, I could have Postgres in there. So based on that server, notice when I don't have it checked, I go here, I don't see anything. So they're grayed out. But then it's server dependent. If I go here, and I'll go ahead and go to the details. So here are my details here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's experiment. I'm going to go ahead and, you know what? I'm going all the way out. So let's go ahead and save what I've done. Oh, I don't want to save that stuff. No. Okay. So I'll go back and run my alpha. As an administrator, always run your development environment as an administrator. And I'll open up my project once again. Cloud and subscription test databases. Okay, I have to check my subscription that I'm connecting to. And then now this will show up in a moment. Shows my servers. I click this server, I go and I say, open the tunnel. Open the tunnel. Open Sesame. That's what it should say. It's Open Sesame.
Yes, the Stargate.
Yes. Oh, that's true. It should have that sound.
Yeah.
Okay. Then tunnel looks pretty familiar because I think these are static kind of information there that are generated. So again, you're pretty safe because this will only work on this environment with your subscription on your local development environment. But you don't want to go sharing it on weekly webinars across the nation. I highly don't recommend that. Only losers and non-secure individuals do that kind of stuff.
Right.
And you can copy this to clipboard so you can go paste it into your super secret OneNote or Evernote or wherever you kind of store all those secret things.
Fantastic. Well, we are running out of time today. There is a question that hopefully we'll get to next time. It's a DevOps question, and it's basically, can you discuss the best practices for running multiple applications on the same web server, including demo and test sites? So that,
cool. Great question.
That's a good 10 to 20 minute discussion right there.
Easily.
Easy. Yeah. But yeah, we have to jump back into that. If you do have any further questions, go ahead and send emails to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. I'd like to thank everyone who is here today. Thank you, Dion, for presenting. Thanks everyone who asked questions. And thanks, of course, to Sarah in documentation for help getting us the correct answers. And we hope to see you next week on our next Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. Take care and goodbye.